Right. Welcome to more field questions at Red Rock Research. I'm Mike Barry, and this is
Danielle Burnell.
And we've got some questions from the field that we are answering. So Danielle's got the list.
Okay, first question for today is how do we deal with traditional audit paperwork transition? So I'm guessing that is transitioning to Agile, from traditional audit paperwork to how you would deal with audit in Agile.
Audit paperwork transition. Okay. There could be two things they're asking. That could be one of how they transition from traditional paperwork into Agile. And so we have some different philosophies around at least requirements and that kind of paperwork in Agile. What we like to say is create as many requirements or as much documentation as you need, but no more. And so you have to ask yourself, what's the business reason for this document, or what's the business need for this thing to be written down? Mm-hmm. The other philosophy we have in Agile is that the real value is the conversation that led up to the requirement document. The requirement document itself is just a receipt of the final decisions, but the real value is the conversations. Mm-hmm. So we still do some documentation as much as we need to keep us keep us remembering what it was we concluded. But what you don't want to be doing is drafting a whole bunch of documentation and then sliding it under the door or across the sea to some other group somewhere and hoping that they understand what you meant by what you have written down. We've just learned that's not a good way to build software. It's just not. It generates a lot more work, a lot of rework, a lot of effort, a lot of knowledge transfer that has to happen in addition to the documents, and really it just means you didn't do it right in the beginning. The right way to do it is to have all the same people in the room talking about it. The other thing they could have been talking about is if you have what we call a regulated industry that you work in or something like that that's governed by like the FDA or something, there are certain quality documents that you have to generate to show that certain gates were passed along the way as you developed something. And what a lot of companies do when they transition to Agile is they will do their research and development. They'll leave that Agile and they'll kind of move fast and innovate and come up with something. Once it's proven and they know it works, then they'll commercialize it using a typical plan-based project model. And so they'll take a bunch of preset steps and documentation templates, and they will plug all the information in so that it shows that they did everything they needed to do. They identified success criteria. They tested for success criteria. They made sure that there was nothing else impacting what they had done, and they've got it all documented and logged. And so so that can be another answer to that question, that they're kind of separating out the research and development from the actual commercialization.
Well, I really like what you said about not doing more than you need to do, because paperwork, that's the whole reason for switching to Agile, is making things easier to transition back and forth. So that makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of people are trying to think about how they're going to transition all of this paperwork over when it's really not necessary, and that's part of the reason for moving into Agile, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so the next question that we have is, let's see. Okay, Agile for teams, I can read, everybody, sort of. Agile for teams dependence on internal sources, teams. Let's see. Let's move past that question. How do you effectively do retrospectives? Okay, that's a great question.
Oh yeah, retrospectives. Retrospectives are really important. They're part of continuous improvement, and they're actually part of the Scrum model. And so what happens is you have your sprint, which lasts 1 to 4 weeks, and you have some meetings at the beginning of the sprint, during the sprint. At the end of the sprint, you have a demo meeting where you show off what you built to the people that are paying you to build it. And then you have a retrospective with just your team. And a retrospective meeting, you talk about what the team did well during the past sprint, what the team could do better at, and then what still is puzzling the team. So what maybe in the environment that the team still struggles with. And so really good retrospectives mean that there's a fair amount of trust within the team and within the environment. And so that's one key element to having good retrospectives, is making sure that the environment and the culture is such that people feel emotionally safe. They can express themselves, however they want to, and they will be taken seriously. That's a really important part of a good retrospective. Another fun part of a good retrospective is you can gamify it. There are games out there that kind of make the mundane parts of business meetings a little bit more fun and creative and interactive. And so we call them innovation games. And these are games where you maybe draw a tree on the whiteboard and you're talking about good ideas to improve something. And so everybody gets to take a turn with a marker, drawing some fruit on the tree or something like that. Another version is you draw a boat on the whiteboard and you're talking about problems and ways to, things that are slowing the team down. And everybody goes and they draw an anchor, and then they draw an anchor chain to the boat to the anchor, and they write on their anchor chain what it is they think is slowing the team down. And
Nice.
that could be kind of fun. Another aspect of good retrospectives, if you're coming from a history of not having good trust in the environment, sometimes that's been the case, then you have to understand that as like a new product owner or Scrum Master, sometimes you have to keep asking the questions in the retrospective. Even though the first few times the team won't take you seriously, nobody will say anything during the retrospective. If you find yourself in an environment like that, you just have to keep asking the team, how can, what do we do well, what could be better, what still puzzles us. And eventually, if you ask enough times, the team will start to open up and they'll start to express themselves to you. Another thing you can do is it may be you as the product owner or the Scrum Master may be kind of the source of why people don't want to open up. If you suspect that, let's say you're the Scrum Master, you're supposed to be at that meeting. Product owner doesn't need to be at that meeting. They should be there, but they don't need to be there. And it's easy enough to dismiss them and say, we may have some feedback for you later. Maybe you're the Scrum Master and nobody's opening up. That's a pretty big clue that maybe there's some trust issues with the team. And so what you want to do in that case is ask the team to pick a facilitator, and then have this discussion. Tell them you're going to step out of the room. You want to hear what their thoughts are, but unbiased. And so they can write down their comments on a piece of paper and leave it on the table for you when the meeting's over. Sometimes some technique like that is kind of necessary to get some good information. So that may be something you can do also to get a retrospective off the ground if it's not really happening like it should. Once you get a healthy environment and a healthy culture, you will have a terrific experience with retrospectives. It's a really great way for the team to self-identify and say, what can we do better and can improve going forward.
That's awesome. Thank you, Mike. Also, that reminds me, everybody out there, if you want to see how to do these games, we can have Mike actually do a whole video for us showing us how to do the different games, and we can actually show you them on screen. So let us know in the comments if that's something you like to see, or if there's something else you want to talk about. We love to hear your questions and comments. Give us all the feedback that you want. We're happy to answer all of your questions on screen or off. So also, please don't forget to give a thumbs up, like our videos, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell so every time we put a new video on, you guys will be notified. Also, we're now on Instagram and Facebook with lots of new uploads for you all the time. Thanks, guys.
That's right. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.